Now, a 12 News special report.
We're projecting we're going to add another 1.5 million people.
Arizona is booming.
But we are back.
But all the growth comes at a cost.
It's not affordable for everybody, and it's not sustainable.
12 News presents Boomtown right now. Thanks for joining us for this special presentation of Boomtown. I'm Mark Curtis.
And I'm Treya Mai. For the past few years, 12 News has explored all the ways our community has seen tremendous growth and what the future may have in store.
Industries like tech and film bring more people and more opportunities, but all that growth begs the tough question, what's the cost? We're asking, what will the future of Arizona really look like for all of us who call this state our home? Team 12's William Pitts takes a look at the best projections.
20 years from now, will it be the Jetsons? Star Trek? Maybe a bit more down to earth.
Next 20 years, we're going to keep growing. We're projecting we're going to add another 1.5 million people to Maricopa County by 2040.
Scott Wilkin is the guy who looks into the crystal ball at the Maricopa Association of Governments to predict the future of the valley. Right now, that's adding one new person every 6 minutes.
People are coming from everywhere. From the United States, we're seeing households moving from California. That's 20% of our movers. We're also seeing 4, 5, 6% of our movers coming from places like Illinois, Florida, Colorado, Washington, Texas. Those are some of the big ones.
If 1.5 million people are coming here, where are they going to live?
Our last set of projections was kind of more focused on the core. We saw a lot more growth, redevelopment and infill there, and a little bit less on the periphery in the suburbs.
The projections show the far west valley growing in population. Buckeye and Surprise all getting more people moving in. By 2040, the estimates are that those cities will be roughly the same size as Scottsdale, Chandler, and Glendale. Phoenix stays the most populated city, followed by Mesa.
Not as much room in the East Valley. In the far East Valley, there's space. There's some plans for some big developments out that way.
They're moving here from everywhere.
I was looking pretty much all over the place.
Several reasons. One, the weather.
I really like it.
And filling in the suburbs and adding to the downtown core. So where are they going to work?
The more significant area for the advanced manufacturers and the technology companies is the corridor between Tucson and Phoenix.
The Arizona Commerce Authority says tech will be a big part of the valley's future. There are chip manufacturers like Intel and TSMC. That huge building near I-17 and Carefree Highway. The old Arizona joke is that we'll just keep growing until one day we run into Los Angeles. That probably won't happen. But Scott says the West Valley is going to get way more popular.
As you're driving to LA or driving to Vegas, if you're used to seeing some of this farmland or bare desert, you're going to see something different.
So 20 years from now, we don't know if we'll have flying cars or robot butlers.
Hip hip, adulthood.
Experts say we will have a lot more neighbors and a bigger city to call home.
While the city may be getting bigger, it's certainly getting more expensive. All of us living here know the squeeze that inflation has put on our bank accounts. And it may be the most obvious for anyone who's trying to buy a home.
This Boomtown meant booming prices since 2020. And while the housing market is starting to slow down, costs remain out of reach for many. Team 12's Michael Doudna breaks down the data for first-time home buyers in the Phoenix metro. Michael?
At really the center of this, it's a debate over how these cities should handle this growth. Groups like the Arizona Multi-Housing Association, believe that there needs to be more building across the board and less regulations. But the cities themselves feel that they can grow in a way that keeps their identity and still tries to make housing affordable. But in the middle of all of this are those folks looking for their first home.
For months, Holly McKellips was on a search.
So I was looking in Mesa, I was looking in Queens Creek.
Searching for the disappearing starter home.
It was a pain in the butt. Frustrating to say the least.
This spring, Holly went from house to house, putting in offer after offer, but never got her home.
It makes you want to give up. It does.
So she signed a lease, hoping to try again next year for her first home.
Is that an idea that is dwindling? Maybe.
And nationwide, the affordable starter home has become harder to find. In the early 2000s, the average new home sold for around $200,000. For example, back in August of 2002, 58% of all new homes were under $200,000. Now, the average new home price is over $500,000, and less than 3% of new homes are under that $200,000 mark.
We need to zone more land for housing, and housing at all types.
That's Courtney Levinas, CEO of the Arizona Multi-Housing Authority.
We have a lack of supply of housing. We have not adequately planned for the population growth that we are currently experiencing.
And with the valley's population expected to grow by more than 1 million people, this could get worse.
Where are they all going to fit?
And that is the big unknown. Levinas says many cities have focused on permitting bigger and nicer homes, trying to attract more money.
So they wanted, large homes on large lots, and that's great, but it's not affordable for everybody, and it's not sustainable.
And according to projections from Elliott Pollock, an economic real estate consultant, if you are someone making under $80,000, you often can't afford to buy in most of the major cities in the valley.
That's kind of the big thing right now is, am I going to be able to buy a home in Arizona?
It's a question Holly is facing. See, she's a veteran waiting out the time on her lease, hoping for a break so she can call a house a home.
I hate to have to leave and be like, you know what, I tried, but this market just isn't for me.
Michael Doudna, 12 News.
Coming up, 1 million people are moving to the valley. Can we sustain it? Welcome back to this 12 News special presentation, Boomtown, as we explore how the valley's population is expected to keep blowing up and how that growth might push us to the limits.
We're expecting 1 million more people to move here over the next 40 years, but we're already experiencing increased costs and a serious water shortage. Team 12's Michael Doudna talked with the experts about the choices that may impact our future.
The city keeps booming, but as we grow, will we go bust?
You get that sickening hollow ring to it. It's like, oh no.
Already in rural parts of Arizona, vital resources are running dry.
Do you have a well that's down 750 feet with no luck? And the neighbor drilled right across the street 1,300 feet down and didn't hit a drop.
Water restrictions are coming thanks to a depleted Lake Mead. And with the valley scheduled to grow by more than 1 million people, can we handle everyone who wants to be here?
So it'll be habitable, no question. I think it's whether you want to live that way.
Professor Catherine Jacobs studies this for a living. And to be clear, Arizona is not heading towards some uninhabitable wasteland. But with increasing temperatures and a dwindling water supply, life might just get more unpleasant, more expensive, and less convenient.
There's no doubt that the way water is being used today is not the way it will be used in 2050.
That could mean changes to who gets water and when. It could mean less water for agriculture, for fun. And without changes, the latest projections say we will see 130 days a year over 100 degrees and less than 9 inches of rain annually.
That being said, we can very much change the trajectory of what our future looks like.
In the end, Jacobs says it comes down to choices. Do we choose more renewable energy, to regulate water outside of the city, or make small adjustments to our day-to-day lives?
Are we buying raspberries imported from Peru, or are we buying them from California?
And depending on decisions like those, Jacobs believes Arizona could either become a destination location for decades, or we could face a more brutal future and be left with one last choice, if it's worth it to stay in the valley.
From everything we eat during the day to where we set our thermostat, that affects the future of the planet.
Michael Doudna, 12 News.
All right, Michael, thanks. Well, it's true that we do face some tough choices ahead, but Arizonans are no stranger to living in an unforgiving climate. Innovation, though, has always been the solution to the problems that come with living in the desert.
And the first biggest challenge Arizonans had to face, the heat. Team 12's William Pitts takes us back to our state's first big boom after the invention of the air conditioner.
For at least 3 months every year,
Kind of brutal sometimes. It's hot out here.
the desert
I got heat stroke twice.
takes its toll.
I can't stand it. I've got a headache right now.
The one relief?
Can't wait to get home and get into my AC.
That sweet, cold air. Without air conditioning, Phoenix couldn't be the 5th most populated city in the country.
You just expected that.
Just ask state historian Marshall Trimble. He grew up in Arizona before air conditioning was common.
I can remember those nights of sleeping outside, just
moving your blankets and a cot outside.
That didn't really make it cooler, but it was bearable. And for decades, that's how people lived here. It was hot, you sweated, you dealt with it, or you just didn't come here.
Things changed with in the 20th century, really drastically, with the advent of air conditioning. That's one of our milestones, major milestones. I have about 4 or 5 in Arizona's history, starting with the discovery of gold.
That's right, AC is right up there with gold. When air conditioning was installed, it wasn't in your house.
They didn't have air conditioning, commercial air conditioning, until 1931. And that was around the Fox Theater and some of those places like that.
So you could go somewhere to cool off. Kind of. It took another 20 years to start getting air conditioning in people's houses.
For regular people, started being developed in the 50s, and we put the first unit into Sun City air conditioning in January of 1960.
Dan Burke is the former CEO of Gettle Air Conditioning. He says Gettle didn't invent air conditioning, but they patented the heck out of it. More than 100 air conditioning patents to make it better, cheaper, cooler.
We invented the residential, affordable air conditioning.
Once that happened, Arizona started booming. In 1940, there were 65,000 people living in Phoenix. In 1950, that number shot up to 106,000, then quadrupled by 1960. Big developments like John F. Long's Maryvale neighborhood started popping up. Del Webb started building the massive Sun City retirement community.
With Del Webb, he put an air conditioning in every home.
And those were mostly Gettle air conditioners. Today, there are a ton of air conditioning companies, and having an AC unit is pretty much standard. Without it, the city we know probably wouldn't be here. William Pitts, 12 News.
Up next, the magic of making movies comes back to Arizona, but will it pay off?
And one of the biggest new industries in Arizona taking on water when Boomtown continues.
As we continue our special coverage of Boomtown, we're putting a spotlight on industry, including one the state hopes to bring back to Arizona. But how much will it cost?
This year, Arizona passed a new tax incentive for the film industry, and already studios are making plans and starting to film in the valley. But will these plans bring in rewards? Team 12's William Pitts takes a look at bringing the bright lights back to town.
Westerns, action, suspense. Arizona looks pretty good on film. We even managed to make a Circle K iconic.
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
But the film industry here has been a roller coaster. At times, the height of popularity, and other times when a Hollywood studio seemingly wouldn't even look at the state that was only an hour flight away.
The film industry's suffered in Arizona for a decade. You know, it's been very difficult. People have just been flying over to New Mexico and Georgia where they have incentives. Whenever you're ready.
Randy Murray has been making films, shows, and commercials with his studio in Phoenix for decades. They just haven't always been shot here.
It's ridiculous. I have written TV series for Arizona, had to shoot them in Canada.
That came down to one thing, money. With tax breaks for filming in other states, it's cheaper to just make someplace else look like Arizona.
We have been off the radar as far as the studios are concerned, but we are back.
Back because the tax breaks that went away years ago in Arizona are also back. The new Arizona tax credit program is set to give away $125 million in credits to Hollywood. But it's not a guarantee that movies will be made here. Arizona tried this in the early 2000s and actually lost over $6 million. And most of the jobs were temporary. The new tax credit hopes to make the jobs permanent by requiring that studios hire local.
This was really taken from kind of inspiration from my vintage studio in LA, Honeymoon Inn.
Honeymoon Inn is one of Jacob Owens' 16 filming locations in LA. Everything from the old motel to a huge ranch in the desert. And now, Phoenix.
But down to, yeah, I mean, we got even like these old RCA cassettes, Willie, you know, Elvis.
Owens has built a hybrid space that's not just for bigger productions.
We have some rooms that are still under construction. This is gonna be like this LED wall.
It also has spots for Instagram photos and social media content. Even a podcast studio. Owens says he may expand the space, and if he does, he'll soon have some big competition. There are plans for huge soundstage complexes in Buckeye and Scottsdale. Both are a long way from being built and will cost hundreds of millions of dollars, each with multiple sound stages. Because in order for a film project to get the tax benefit, they have to film on a 10,000 square foot soundstage or bigger, or do their post-production here in Arizona.
once they build them, they're going to want to fill them.
And that means production staff, something Arizona doesn't really have. Even Jacob Owens' production used crew mostly brought over from LA. The next step in the film renaissance in Arizona is getting production crew that's actually from Arizona. Scottsdale Community College is starting a training program for production assistants. They want to train 2,000 of them over the next 5 years, hoping that with a little training and showing them the money,
I'm a sun devil, man!
And now you want Arizona dollars.
Hollywood will come back. William Pitts, 12 News.
The film industry may cost the state some tax money, but this industry could suck up more than its share of a different resource, water.
Arizona is shaping up to be a technology haven, but data is a water-intensive industry. Team 12's William Pitts continues his coverage with this look at how the state will manage the demands on water for new tech.
How much water is your cat video worth? It could live here, in a massive building in Mesa. Construction equipment everywhere, cranes and workers putting up walls. The whole thing will be a Facebook data center at Ellsworth and Elliott. That's a lot of data, a lot of servers, and they need a lot of water. Servers generate a lot of heat. Data centers have to keep them cool or they'll shut down. Most either use electric air conditioning or evaporative cooling, water.
We all love the fact that we can store a lot of data, and we don't think much about the water footprint of, every selfie.
Sarah Porter is the director of the Kyle Center for Water Policy at ASU. She says the real problem is that water is an investment, and data centers typically don't give back much. They only employ a few people for such a large building.
There are other industries that could move in and use the same amount of water, or even less water, and provide many more jobs or other types of revenue for a city.
But at least one East Valley city decided they do want to make data centers BYOW, bring their own water.
The way our policy works is they either have to show a value, which is employment, and if they don't have that, then they have to bring their own water supply.
Chandler passed a policy in 2015 that required water-cooled data centers to either replace real water or buy water credits.
What's happened is they haven't really grown in Chandler.
There could have been a concern over saying no to business, any business, but that didn't happen.
Little concern they would have a negative perception that Chandler didn't have the water, but it was opposite. We had the water. We just wanted to make sure we used it appropriately.
Tech companies have been trying to find other ways to cool data centers for years. Microsoft has tried sinking smaller data centers into the ocean to cool them. The company said it's worked in the past. Now they're trying a larger test in the Orkney Islands off the Scottish coasts. Other companies have tried heat-absorbing oil, but the vast majority of data centers use evaporative coolers, and that takes water. And even if ocean cooling can work, it would be expensive to move every data center that's already built.
The companies themselves are also more conscious than ever. And we're seeing big companies think very carefully about their use of water resources and and the optics, I think, of moving in and taking up a big chunk. No one in Arizona has limitless water supplies.
This huge building, almost 1 million square feet, will only employ 100 people when it's done, according to Facebook. But the company has said the new data center will use 60% less water than a typical data center. And they've said they would invest in projects that would restore 200 million gallons of water per year. Facebook says that's more than the data center will use. Still, it's planned to be another data center like those all over the Southwest, all using some amount of water to keep your videos and photos online. William Pitts, 12 News.
Still to come when Boomtown continues, a little hometown pride for one part of the valley that saw its boom several decades ago.
We talked to the residents who want to bring that back. Stay with us.
Right now, we're examining how the valley is changing, booming, and what it's costing communities.
We're taking you into one critical neighborhood that's seen a lot of change and where it's still affordable for most people to live. William Pitts joins us from Maryvale.
Crepes, coffee, a French breakfast in a neighborhood strip mall in Maryvale.
We were looking more for kind of the Latin community, the Hispanic community, and what better place than here in Maryvale.
Daniel Barajas is a former LA cop, and cops know coffee.
I went on my own, went on my journey, and came back around, and I just love the circle about it.
So he moved back to his hometown of Maryvale to set up shop with El Cafecito.
I grew up down the street from here, so it was perfect. I was went to school at Australia Middle School for a little bit, lived here for a little bit, and it was just kind of, I went on my own, went on my journey and came back around, and I just love the circle about it, and now I'm able to create something for the community here.
When Phoenix was growing in the 1950s and 60s, where do you think people wanted to live? Scottsdale? Paradise Valley?
Here you see the Shannon.
Nope, it was Maryvale.
GE automatic washers and evaporative coolers.
That's movie legend Buster Keaton in a promotional film about the John F. Long development of Maryvale in 1961. At its peak, Long was building 7 houses a day.
It's the Lantern Inn at the shopping city. Here, fine food and beverages are served in very pleasant surroundings.
Not to mention a shopping mall for all the people that were moving there. Times have changed since 1961.
You know how now it's like kind of middle class. It used to be a little bit on the higher end back then.
Is it a little hopeful also? Of like, we could get back to that.
We can, and I am hopeful.
City Councilwoman Betty Guardado represents and lives in Maryvale. Why Maryvale? Because I know you moved from LA, right?
Yes, I moved from LA here, and I grew up in a very similar neighborhood as Maryvale. And probably being a little homesick, it felt like I just need to be what's going to be home away from home.
In the 1980s, Maryvale started declining. There are a lot of reasons. Dr. Anthony Pratcher at ASU has researched Maryvale, and he grew up there.
During the 70s and 80s, what you wind up having are a confluence of policy decisions that exacerbate ongoing social conflict.
Pratcher says Maryvale was almost entirely white in 1960, thanks to racial housing policies that were legal then. In 2010, it was 76% Hispanic.
Once the savings and loan crisis does hit, a lot of foreclosures occur there, and then you just have a continued disinvestment. It winds up having a really negative reputation as a neighborhood.
An ASU study showed urban blight crept in, juvenile delinquency and gangs went up, and crime went up. No one's under any illusions about Maryvale's reputation. It's working class, the houses haven't changed much, there's not much new development, and it still makes the news mostly for crime. Though the ASU study did show crime went down when police started targeted enforcement. But people like Guardado and Barajas don't think it has to be that way. How do you change that reputation?
I think it takes work. I think it takes the city being committed to that area.
Maryvale unfortunately got a bad rep during the years and whatnot. Obviously crime and stuff like that, but it's like, we can complain about it, but what can we do to kind of help it out and fix it?
Maybe that starts one cup at a time. William Pitts, 12 News.
Thanks, William. And thank you for putting your trust in us. If you have a story you want us to cover, let us know. Send an email to connect@12news.com.
You can find this and more of our Boomtown coverage on 12news.com and on 12 News Plus. We're always streaming on Fire TV and Roku.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow Arizona's top stories and breaking news by downloading the 12 News app and subscribing to the 12 News YouTube channel.